We open our 1993 season. This time, rather than with a little train action, we'll show you a little bit of spring cleanup on the 1-inch line with Dan Atkin and Don Atkin at work. We've come out here. It's Saturday, April 17th, fairly early in the year, and there's an awful lot of stuff to get done before our first steaming, which will be what, next?
Theoretically, the last Sunday of April, which is next weekend.
But before we get started, we're out here tamping the track. Why do we need to tamp the track?
Well, every year the winter frost tends to cause the track to come up out of the ground a little bit, and it comes up anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to as much as 1 inch in spots. And we go along with this heavy tamper, and we simply set the track. You can see it probably going down, and we have to cover the entire mile of 1-inch track, 4,028 feet of main line plus another 1,000 feet of sidings. So we've got about a mile that we do, and this is our first Saturday out here. While we're doing this, we're also cleaning up branches that have fallen on the track. And
this thing is what, pretty light, or is it pretty heavy?
Oh, I'm guessing that it must be a 20-pound hammer. And
so you're pretty tired by the end of the day.
At the end of the day, your arms feel like you wondered where all those muscles were, because they sure are sore.
I was noticing all the tunnel portholes, they still have all that, all the lumber holding them together.
Yeah, we'll be doing that also today.
And
actually,
a couple of trees have fallen.
We'll be cleaning those up. We generally have the first Saturday out here in the spring. We always wait until the frost is out of the ground, and it appears to be out today. But we end up having a solid day of nothing but cleanup and repair from the winter. And then once we're done, she's good for another 12 months until next spring.
Sounds good. Why do we set all this stuff up every year?
Well, every year when it freezes, of course, the ground wants to push in a little bit. And our thought here is if we reinforce the tie walls on either side of the tunnel portals, we'll end up having a lot more life out of the existing tie walls. You can see over here in the distance that we're already getting some.
Oh, this one's kind of coming out here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pushing in. But these timbers, which we're going to take out right now, and if you watch me, they've been pushed in, and this is not a particularly tough job, but nevertheless, before we run, we're going to have to get it down. Get that one down? We're going to need another one. Let me get this board. Normally we don't like to hit the track, but being on film, it had to happen. We'll end up stacking these timbers away from the track site here so that it doesn't become an offensive appearance. And these timbers will be good again for next fall. Well, as you can see, we've got to make a little bit of a detour on our camping schedule and clean off some of these trees. This tree obviously fell from this spot right here, and typical of the winter damage that we have to clean up. We will come along with a rake afterwards and get most of this. I'll leave the tamper sit there, but in the foreground here you can see we've got the timbers that we've covered the switch stands with, and this is necessary because the switch stand is only about 6 inches high, and the snow would cover them in the winter, and then if there are deer or other animals up here, they would end up walking and smashing the switch stands. So we always cover all of the switch stands, and that's just one more project that we have to clean up in the spring. We're doing a little spring maintenance on the 1.5-inch track here. We've got a problem where on a little curve the outside rail was actually sagging down a little bit, giving us a reverse elevation. And so what we're doing is we're watching the level, and we're tamping a little soil underneath, or a little ballast underneath the outside of the ties to bring it up. And so you can watch the level and see what we're doing here. When we get all through, then we'll reballast the edge out here, and we'll have a nice, excellent running track. Now I'm getting too high.
Early in the spring of '93, Tim Olson on the right, Don Atkin's in the center, and Dick Johnson on the left are discussing plans for the replacement of the original 1-inch bridge, which you can see in the background. And by late summer, it had been replaced by a brand new steel and concrete structure.
You know, 10 by 36.
If we're down the 42, 44 inches, we don't have to worry about any heaving.
Right.
10-foot frost, you're going to get even. See over there, our reason for having it so large was because we got so much mass
To get the stonework to fit, and because those bridges are
weight
so
of the
high.
bridge and everything, so we got to have a lot of mass in the ground. But here, we won't have
Here we don't need
mass.
At the end of the 1992 tape, we saw how John Schmidt, as he was approaching a switch, he could see that the switch had split, and he was unable to decelerate his train sufficiently and did some damage to his cars. He's solved the problem, and let's just give a listen here as he explains how he and Jack Anderson solved this problem.
Removed all the trucks from the cars and put new axles and new bearings on everything. And then Jack Anderson, a very good friend of mine, and myself decided that we best put brakes on the whole amount of equipment, which we've done. And the brakes are run by air, which is exactly the same principle that Westinghouse used on a regular railroad. There are springs that keep the brakes on when the air is removed, and when the air is applied, the brakes are removed. And maybe what we could do is get Jack Anderson in here and do a little bit of extra explaining on how the mechanism works.
First of all, we need to have some place to put a compressor, so we have built an express refrigerator car from John's Archives of Great Northern Cars. We came up with this car, and we modified it so that the top hinges up, and we've mounted a 12-volt air compressor and a battery in here. So this is our air supply, and from the air supply we have a main line coming up into the tender, and we come off and we have a line. The air compressor car, we come up with a line pressure into the tender, and we have a gauge here that indicates how much pressure we have in our tank. And from there we go through one regulator, which cuts it down to 30 pounds. And then we have our brake valve over here, which now we're applying the brakes. Okay, then when we move our brake lever this way, we release the brakes. Okay, when we have pressure on, we have our brakes released, and now we're going to set the brake by taking the air out of the train line. We have one cylinder on each truck, so we have 2 cylinders per car. And okay, you can hear our compressor is kicked in right now, so we're pumping air. If the train should ever come apart in 2 pieces, we have a quick disconnect feature, which now the train itself is going to set up and not move. The tender that John's got his hand on right now, that is a quick kind of an emergency valve. And also, if the train should come in pieces, we can shut off our flow of air down through the train so that we don't bleed our main air reservoir. And granted a special variance for 1.5-inch cars that we do not need safety chains anymore. So the only place we have chains right now is between the air car and the tender, because we haven't got brakes on the air car yet, but maybe that will come next year.
Okay, I want to show you the new car that Jack Anderson and I built this last winter. This is the car that houses all of our air equipment. You'll notice that the whole side is sort of tongue and groove to represent boards and batten, which was scarfed out on our radial arm saw, and the material is masonite. The lettering has been done on a laser cutter that we use for independent locomotive services, large Burlington Northern and Great Northern and Chicago Northwestern type locomotives. Now, this particular one is a little bit different than the others because it is Great Northern. I mentioned that before, but the unique part about the whole thing is that the car itself, including the trucks, all of the side frames and everything, have been totally scratch built with the exception of the wheels. It's the only purchased part on the whole car. Note the trucks, they're uniquely different onto this type of a car. There's no commercial truck like this available, so Jack and I had to make the whole truck from one end to the other, basically out of aluminum bar stock and steel. And
This sequence of photos is taken just to show you the layout as it would appear without any foliage on the trees. I'm over on the west side of the valley, photographing towards the east, and the engines right now are at the bottom of the grade, and they're now just starting up the 0.7% grade, which they will climb all the way to the tunnel, and then once beyond the tunnel, and in the second little sequence here, they'll be on the 1% grade as they climb their way all the way to summit. Locomotives now have at this point emerged from the tunnel, and they're on the 1% uphill climb. And now they're passing through the Windy Point area where there is a passing sighting. It's the halfway point since leaving the station. And now the train is just cresting the hill at Summit, and we'll start the 2.2% downgrade back to the station. May 1st, started construction on one of the through plate steel bridges. Yeah, just a little later on in the day, John Schmidt and Jack Anderson are putting together some switches. By mid-May, work was progressing right along on the new steel through plate girder bridges. And there'll be 3 of those, which will be on the east end of the new bridge, which will cross the infield.
Gentleman that's welding, his name is Tom Jacobson, and he runs a Porter Welder company. Comes right out here with all of his equipment, everything he needs for welding, cutting, and so forth, mark bearing, so he really does the job. It's going to take about 6 10-hour days to put these 3 trusses together.
Well, just finished cutting down 5 or 6 large trees. As you can see, we use these trees for more than just play, and it turns a work day into something really enjoyable.
During the Memorial Day meet, we steamed up the Atlantic, number 100, my dad's locomotive, for the first time for in about 2 to 3 years. And it had been in the back shop for quite some time, getting some heavy maintenance done.
Today is the 28th of May, 1993, and we're celebrating the first day of our 3-day spring meet. It's a couple of days before Memorial Day, and we're running on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Today is Friday, 28th of May. And we've got the little 1-inch Atlantic all steamed up. We're almost ready to go. You can see we open up the roof here and can blow the whistle. We've got about 82 pounds of steam in it right now, and we'll be running it up to approximately 100 pounds, and then you'll see the pop valve pop. The fire is looking nice and hot, and we're getting all set to have a fun run day.
How long has it been since we've run this thing?
Well, we ran it 2 weeks ago, but that was the first run in 2 years. So the engine has been in what you would call the back shop. And we put on new drivers, repainted it all, and it's now in excellent shape, and it ought to run for another 20 years. This engine was built in between 1965 and 1969. So from the finish date, it's already 24 years old, and today it looks brand new.
Friday night we had a catered dinner by Kentucky Fried Chicken, and all members.
It's rabbit, really, but we aren't talking about it.
Every member of the family.
a good marine.
Clean gal.
Is he a licensed electrician to be doing that wiring on your engine?
Yeah, you union man there, Joe?
As darkness descends upon the St. Croix Railroad, the engineers bring their locomotives up to operating pressures for a little evening operation.
I wanted to get that piece out there anyway. She was kind of down low.
Yeah.
Well, here we are on Saturday, the 29th of May, and this is day 2 of the annual spring meet. And I'm standing here with Dick Johnson. And Dick, what can you tell us about your locomotive here?
Well, first of all, it's a 1-inch scale model of a Great Northern 08 class, which is a heavy Mikado type locomotive. And I worked on these on the old Butte Division between Havre, Montana and Williston, North Dakota. And I was traveling engineer on the Great Northern. So it was on the full-size locomotives. So it's always been a kind of a desire of mine to build this locomotive. And it was completed in 1987. That coming into its 6th year now. And it's been a good runner. A few little problems here and there, but I've been able to overcome them. It'll handle probably 7 or 8 adults on a 1% grade. And otherwise, it does a really good job.
Yeah, I've seen it run. It is absolutely fantastic, the number of people this thing will pull. I've seen 20 people on behind this locomotive. I think this is about as powerful as a inch and a half would be.
Well, you know, if you've got small people on there, like kids, you can put 3 kids on a car. Yeah, that's it does a good job. And hopefully today it'll perform as it has in the past. I've got some unique features on here. We're running with electric brakes, and steam brakes and hand brakes. So we have three different systems to operate here. This electric brake is a takeoff from the model airplane servos, and it's strictly a resistor rheostat control. But each of the cars have little rheostats on them, which servos on them, which control the brake force on the cars.
Sounds good. Well, I'll come back and we'll look at her in a little bit after you get some steam pressure up.
Okay. About 5 more minutes, we'll be taking that blower off and putting it on the steam blower.
Okay. Well, you've appeared a great many times in the videos, and I don't think the average person who sees you all the time, do they know who you are? You are?
I'm John Schmidt.
And you built this locomotive?
This is a locomotive I built, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And
it's been functioning now since 1984, and what I'm doing is cleaning the flues because we ran quite late last night in the dark and had an extensively good time.
Well, that's good.
The thing is that it's a hobby that just is the most delightful thing that ever came along, and I'm sure that you will agree with me.
I agree totally. It is a lot of fun. Now, this locomotive, you scratch built this, or this is from?
This is the one. The one that's at home is the one that I'm in the process of scratch building. But this one was built with parts from little engines, although I have added an awful lot of scratch built pieces to it. Wherever I could use a casting that Little Engines has created, we used it, but where it's not available, we had to scratch build it. And in order to make it as authentic as it possibly could be for an A6, which this really is, an SP or a Southern Pacific prototype, some of the pieces had to be made by hand.
Okay, I just happen to be noticing the paint job on here. Now, Dick Johnson's locomotive also has this paint job. What's is this?
Well, I'm partial to Great Northern, have always been all my life, and the particular Atlantic that Great Northern has is a unit that's not quite as aesthetic looking as this one, and so I chose this one for its looks, and I chose the paint scheme because it's Great Northern's, which doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense, but as long as it belongs to the St. Croix Railroad, who cares?
Hey, it works.
It works, yes, sir.
All right, well, we'll come back and talk to you once the steam pressure gets up.
Okay.
How long does that take, by the way?
Sometimes half an hour, sometimes 15 minutes. It depends upon, I believe, the atmospheric pressure or something, because it's very weird. If the air is heavy, apparently it takes longer to make it go.
That could be.
But we shall see.
All right, Dick, I see that you've got it all steamed up and ready to go.
Yeah, she's about ready. We got full pressure, 120 pounds, almost, and half a glass of water. I'm adding a little water with the injector right now. And put the microphone down there and hear that injector. I have a water pump on the other side and also a hand pump in case of emergency.
Now, you're burning coal, I see here.
I'm burning, yeah. It's Pocahontas, Southern Indiana or Illinois coal.
I don't suppose some people realize the importance of different coals, but you don't want something that soots up too much.
Right.
And
something that holds the fire good, and like you say, doesn't put out too much smoke and so forth. Not too many ashes also.
Well, we'll see you out on the line.
Yeah, I'm about ready to move here, and
Well, it's now mid-June, and I just love taking a bunch of detailed pictures. Dick Johnson's engine on the right, and my dad's locomotive still on the left here. Imagine yourself, the engineer, walking up into the cab. Well, we now get our first glimpse of Dwayne Treiberg's brand new Hudson, and it's being run by John Schmidt.
You're looking at some of the massive 1-inch motive power.
Taking a swing on the table here, we see Dick Johnson's locomotive, Eric Tromberg's locomotive, and Don Atkin's locomotive. The spring meet went rather well, and it really had not been in the plans that that would be the last time a locomotive would go across the old bridge which had stood since the early 70s. However, it was decided on June the 5th to knock it down, and that's what we did. This allowed us to actually do a little better job of surveying and to position the piers and the abutments, which were going to be made out of concrete, in just exactly the right position. All the lumber from the old bridge was piled into the parking lot to make a bonfire.
This is the east end abutment, and you can see end of track here, and the new bridge will take off from here. I'm pointing in a westerly direction now, and again, it'll go 120 feet across the picnic table area, or as we refer to it, the infield. In the background here now, you can see the holes that are being dug for the concrete footings that are going in for the abutments. And we'll also be putting in a concrete abutment here and another abutment at the other end, of course. And this work will continue to progress every Saturday, and then we intend to pour the concrete. After we put the forms in on Saturday, we'll pour the concrete on the following week, on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday or so. And then that next Saturday, we'll tear the forms down, backfill the concrete, and then move on to the next abutment over here.
Okay. Down. 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 Don't kill the guy in the hole.
No, Mark.
Hey. Carmen, what are you doing?
I'm painting oil on the inside of the form so we can get the concrete, so we can get the board off again after the concrete's poured.
Okay, I'm next ready for the next figures in this hole.
Usually during the middle of the week, we'd go out and we'd pour the concrete. And we did this week after week after week, just about all summer long. Vibrator was used to vibrate the concrete so that it would get around all the rebar and get tight against the sides of the molds. Each of the piers would consist of a sub-footing, which you can see here. It's approximately 8 inches thick by 8 feet long and 5 feet wide. The rebar is being set up to support the footing, which will bring the pier to ground level. We'll see this in the next scene here. This would be the footing. You can see the rebar and the keyways, the 2x4s there that'll make up a keyway to secure the actual pier, which will extend above ground. Approximately 2/3 of all the concrete is actually below ground level. During the next Saturday, the forms for the pier were erected, and then again during the week, we came out and now poured the concrete for the pier.
Okay.
Yeah.
On Saturdays,
Well, when you move in here,
we would have to make some slight alterations once in a while
I
to
wouldn't worry
the
about that. I just make it
pier that was going to be poured that next week.
Yeah, you can do it parallel.
Here, Tim Olson left, Dick Johnson center, and Eric Tromberg on the right discuss some of these
exactly from the center of the other pier.
slight alterations in the plans. And let's just give a listen here as they make their final decisions.
12-inch concrete and then 3.5-inch stone. So we'll still have 6 inches of concrete and 3.5 inches of stone.
That's right.
So,
Now this,
okay,
of course,
well, then I'm gonna go
this
drive it
here
in.
only has 3 inches.
Right.
Plus probably about 2
But
and a
these
half.
are going to be the same as the other. All right. Well, then I'm going to go drive this thing in, and then we should double check it again to make sure it's still at 60 and 12, and then we'll paint the corner of the stake that's the right one, and then pull the offsets.
You better hang on to these now. Okay. Got that settled. North Central, okay. 437. 437.
Other way, there you go.
What do you got?
Myself and my dad prepare the sub-footing here for the west abutment. Mike L'Souza here is preparing the concrete after inserting the keyways, the rebar, and the 2x4s, which will support the footing, which will be placed on top of the sub-footing here. And that will bring the concrete up to a ground level. And this is all work being done for the west abutment. Here in this frame, you can see the wings of the abutment extending off to the two sides.
We really don't care if it's too big as convenient. Write it in it, you're done. Nail it.
Out at the St. Croix, all get involved. Here, J.J. Anderson is preparing a patio stone made from some extra concrete.
More wood for the frames, for the concrete forms. This is a typical Saturday morning project to load up the truck and get out to the St. Croix. You can see we've got all these plywood boards now are cut to shape, exact size that we need, and we'll be putting them into the concrete forms this morning.
Here we are removing the forms which had been poured during the week. These forms will be moved and reset up again for the next pier. These holes are being filled in using a 1950 Simplicity tractor. Really has done a good job. In fact, this thing built a lot of the railroad back in the early days. Well, let's get back to running trains here. Earlier on this tape, I introduced you to John Schmidt, and just through some circumstances, I didn't get his locomotive all steamed up. So now he's got it all steamed up, and let's just give a listen here as to what John has to say.
14 years now. And I built this unit way back in 1984, so it's actually been on the railroad probably 9 years.
And I bet in that 9 years, this locomotive has pulled more than anybody's locomotive with all those riding cars of yours, and now the new brake car, and it's quite a setup.
Yeah, it has been, and it's been very fortunate that it's kept its running ability as good as it has. I don't know whether you want to contribute that to the builder or not, but I had a lot of help with it too. So between myself and a number of other bodies who helped me build it, so far so good.
Well, that sounds fun. And later on today, I guess we're going to be operating in two different directions, and we're going to have some meets today. Is that right?
We're going to try. Jack Anderson is going to run Dwayne's locomotive, and he's going to be going the opposite direction of myself, and we hope to be able to make some real good meets that way. Make it a little bit more like a regular railroad.
Well, that sounds good. We'll get some photographs of that to action later on today.
Sounds good, Dan. Thank you very much for the interview.
All of a sudden, the injector would pick up and we'd figure out why, but I know why.
I'm going to try and run through this.
John Schmidt's locomotive has just departed Pine Grove and is now starting downgrade towards the S-curve in the meet with Dwayne Treiberg's locomotive. After the meet, Dwayne Treiberg's locomotive, being run by Jack Anderson, now proceeds upgrade with a heavy manifest. Let's give a listen to this very large locomotive. Here, John Schmidt takes the siding with Jim Deitel following close behind as a second section. as we depart the station on the 1.5-inch track. Notice the trains backing out of the station on the 1-inch track. This is due to the fact that there's no bridge for them to go forward out of the station.
Deitel back there?
I got everybody following me or not?
I don't know.
No, Donnelly is.
Here comes Deitel.
John Schmidt and his locomotive hard at work.
Grab these standing cup deals, dairy bars, they got a water deal, you know. One thing there was a water.
Yeah, there really wasn't much in the way of playing to do this year. Every work session was back to work on the bridge. Move a concrete form, pour the concrete, and fill it in, and go on to the next concrete form. And this, once again, just kept progressing. Here we can see the base of the west abutment and the piers that will support the big long spans. Notice how nicely all these bolts line up. They will help to align the big bridge spans once in place.
We're just checking out the results of our pour on these concrete piers to see how much they vary in height. And there's a fraction of an inch difference in each one of them. So we're pretty close. Whatever adjustment we make will be minor.
Tim Olson helping out on the transit end of things to make sure everything lines up perfectly.
Right there.
Eric Tromberg is at work installing the rebar into the west abutment.
Thanks for coming up.
Dick Johnson designed a special bucket which we use to hoist the concrete from the ready-mix truck over to the abutments, which were just slightly too far away for the chute to reach. And this bucket would support 500 pounds of concrete, and then there's a slide underneath it, which will dump the concrete into the forms.
Let's see, try that again on a Saturday.
Just hang on a second, Bob. I'll give you a place to go ask me.
Oh, I see. That's kind of unusual. Where are you going to go?
Well, the start. Had to go to Denver and back.
Oh, gee.
Tonight?
We're going to go right through.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Last
we
night they were already building.
Gotta be. They make it exactly the same as the distance from the face to the concrete to the first bolt.
Well, that's,
Let's cut it. Okay, and then tack it up here at the top, Bob.
3 inches from the
Well,
face.
we want an adjustment in the way we weld the plate to the blade.
So put them 3 inches, see? And then they know we got it.
Okay, 3 inches.
Tim Olson is doing now with this backhoe is cleaning out the underbrush in preparation for putting in a coal shed, which we badly need. So we buy our coal in 3-ton lots, and so we need a place to put about 35 or 40 sacks.
Here Tim Olson is unloading the stone blocks, which are placed on the face of all the abutments and piers. This stone looks very similar to the type of stone that, say, would be on the old Great Northern Stone Arch Bridge across the Mississippi.
foundation and concrete slab for the new coal bin, which we sadly needed a couple years ago. This will hold approximately 3 tons of sacked coal, and it'll be arranged so that we'll have about 3 different sizes of coal to go in here. The design of the building, of course, you'll see later when we get that up. It'll be basically a shed-type building with an overhanging roof, looking similar to an old-time railroad warehouse.
Today is Saturday, August 21st, and we just finished a couple hours ago the last of the concrete. My dad, Dan Atkin's here, and everybody behind, and we'll talk to people here, had a lot to do with this. Dad, what exactly happened today, and what have we accomplished?
Well, we poured the 8th pour, and we put about 3 yards of concrete in the east side abutment. And this was the last of 8 pours. And you can see stretched out in the background, this will make a 6-span. 3 of them will be through truss designs, each 21.5 feet long, and 3 of them will be through plate girder bridge spans, each 12.5 feet long. And we hope to have the bridges set in place a week from today. And we've got the crew here that did so much all summer. This has truly been the year of the bridge.
Eric Tromberg, he did an awful lot of the drawing and actual some of the engineering. You and Dick Johnson in the background here, you drew up most of the bridge. And we've got Tim Olson over here, and Tim, you've done so much of the organizing of the heavy machinery to get in here to put the concrete in place, and John, slave labor, Tim Kirby, slave labor, Jack Anderson, slave labor, and Jim, slave labor, Walt, slave labor.
Dave back there too somewhere?
Where's Dave? Dave Paulson in the background, slave labor. It certainly has been a long project, and next week we'll put the bridges in place. At the same time we were pouring the concrete for the last abutment, we poured the concrete for the coaling bin, and Don Akins puts the finishing touches on that concrete.
Still able to surface a little bit of water, and that's all that we need. This will be a beautifully smooth surface when we're done with this. About 100 feet to the west of here is where the new east bridge abutment is. And we've got to realign the existing 1-inch track so that we'll line up with the new bridge. And the first thing we have to do is remove the old track. And Dan and Mark here have unscrewed the tracks, and they're free to lift out of the ground. You can see we can just pick them up, and we'll re-smooth the ballast and re-level the grade, and then relay this section of track. You can see far in the distance the track. Actually, what will happen here is this track will go a little bit to your left, and then it'll make a 60-foot radius curve, which is equivalent to about a 7-degree curve in real railroad life.
What you're going to see here now is a sequence of pictures, each one about a 1-2 second shot over the space of 1 hour. And this is forming the new 60-foot radius curve to approach the bridge. Notice the stake there just slightly to the right of center, which is now gone, but that's the center line of the new curve. And this just makes kind of an interesting perspective on how the ground slowly changes over the space of about 1 hour. On August 28th, 1993, final last-minute preparations are made to the concrete piers and abutments, and the 2 steel bent towers are put in place, for on this day we lifted the spans into place using a large forklift truck. Tim Olson sets up his laser-guided level. By noon, we were starting the process of lifting each of the through plate spans onto the forklift truck and then taking them over to the bridge and setting them in place. After that job was done, we started onto the through truss spans. Those were so large that each one had to be carried on the truck, one at a time.
Gotta go up all the way to the front till I get up.
One by one, each of the spans is lifted into place. Everything fit just according to plans.
Somebody was lucky. Somebody was
Once the through plate bridges were in place, now it was on to the through truss bridges. And here the crane begins to lift to bring this bridge up onto its flatbed and from there over to the piers.
high enough so we can turn it around.
Yeah, we should set this right on the bed, huh?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, right on the two beams. Right? Yeah, right on the two beams. I don't think so. This is the long one. We'll have to pitch them up. We can do that.
Well, we'll check the finished product and see how close we come to being level, which is what we're striving for. My gosh, we're dead on. Absolutely perfect. Just like the blueprint showed it to be.
As the bridges were being lifted into place, Tim Olson, with his little John Deere tractor here, fills in the east abutment. Finally, by mid-afternoon, the last span is being lowered into place.
1:30 Saturday afternoon, August 28th, 1993. And we have just finished putting the last span, one of 6 spans, in place, and the bridge is virtually finished. Now all we have to do is lay ties on the bridge, put the track down, and within a week or two we'll be able to run trains over it.
Doug Ebert proceeds upgrade through Windy Point Siding with the Great Northern diesels.
I get 2 cents back.
Carmen Schmidt and Kathleen Anderson work the concession stand. The concession stand brings in many dollars for the club, and Carmen Schmidt for the last couple of years has been in charge of this.
I can't do this. You're on a camera. This isn't flat.
No, what's the matter?
Now I'm getting the rest of us.
Dick Johnson readies his locomotive to depart the station. On this last Sunday in August, we're still having to back out of the station over to Malfunction Junction and then proceed up the grade due to the fact that the bridge is still out. Dick Johnson and his Great Northern 08 proceed upgrade through East Portal. Next in the lineup is Eric Tromberg and his Pacific. By early September, work was progressing along on putting the Kasota stone on the face of all of the abutments and piers. Notice here how the blocks, which had been in 3-foot lengths, are now cut to 1-foot length. And they're laid up on the piers and abutments in brickwork fashion. New track is laid on the east side of the bridge. Notice the 60-foot template in use here. And after a little bit of grooming with the broom, and after putting down the ballast, we have a finished track. Over on the west side, near the station, we had to do considerably more track relaying. Once the surveying was done, work could begin on relaying the main line and the siding. Here you can see work progressing right along on the new main line. Where the black dirt is where the old main line used to be. Once the stringers were all put in place, here on the curve, and turning right around back on the tangent portion, the track could be laid. Here Don Atkin and Jack Anderson are laying the track.
Wait.
Tim Kirby is making measurements here for cutting of the walk boards, which will go on either side of the track. As the final piece of track is fitted into place and the fish plates are tightened down, Dick Johnson takes a ride across the bridge on a flat car, the first ride across the new bridge. Work continued on the bridge for the next 2 weeks, fastening it down, putting on the walk boards, even though on the second Sunday in September we did operate on the bridge. The official dedication came on the annual fall meet, the last weekend of September.
If I can have your attention for just a moment, we're going to have a little commemorative ceremony here dedicating our new 1-inch infield bridge that we've been working on actually for about 5 years. 5 years ago, we decided we were going to replace the old wooden structure which went across the, as we call it, the picnic table area. We would replace it with a beautiful new structure. We had no idea how good it actually was going to turn out, but we wanted to do it the best we could. About 3 years ago, we actually started purchasing steel and starting to weld it together. The last 2 years culminated by this past summer. We actually put in the concrete piers and abutments, and I can't tell you how many hundreds or thousands of man-hours of work have gone into it. But trust me when I say there are some of us that have almost lost our lives in building a new bridge because we spent so much time out here. Today is the 25th of September. We're going to have a little ribbon cutting ceremony, and then we will run across the bridge with this first commemorative train. I'm going to walk up, I'll cut the ribbon, and the train will proceed through the bridge. Is cut. Thank you all.
Well, I've seen this locomotive running around the tracks here out at the St. Croix many a time. You are?
Bob Diekman from Algona, Iowa.
And did you build this locomotive?
No, I didn't. This engine was built in 1957 in Falfurrias, Texas by L.L. Yates. And I purchased the engine in 1978 and I think started operating it here at the St. Croix Railroad in 1981.
And did I understand you recently totally rebuilt this whole locomotive?
Ron Beckman rebuilt this engine 2 years ago in Omaha, and it's never run better than right now.
You related an interesting story to me, how you got interested in this and how you found the St. Croix Railroad.
Well, my first contact in live steam was Pershing Scotty Scott from Marion, Iowa, and he invited me to the first live steam meet that I ever attended at his residence. And while there, I was all enthusiastic about it, being the first meet, and I came in contact on the elevated with Dennis Clunder, who's a member of the St. Croix Railroad here in Hudson. And he said, boy, if you want to see a top-line miniature railroad, he says, you should come up and see the St. Croix at Hudson.
Well, that's great. It looks like you've got about top steam pressure here. It's about to pop, and we'll see this engine out on the track today.
We're ready to go. We're over 100 pounds of pressure, Dan.
Sounds good. Men and their locomotives came from as far away as Pennsylvania for the annual fall meet. Dale Gish allowed me to ride along in front of his locomotive and get some interesting photos of himself, his locomotive, and his train. This is an 1.5-inch scale narrow gauge, so it then operates on the 1-inch track. Dick Johnson comes across the new bridge. friend of mine, John Bishop, runs the diesels across the new bridge. Dan Atkin and Eric Tromberg double-headed for most of the day on Sunday, and we've just departed the station and starting up the grade. One of the many locomotives from Pennsylvania starts down the 2.2% grade. Dick Johnson here has a long string of cars in tow up the 1%. Doug Ebert has just departed the Summit station and is now starting down the 2.2% grade. Bruce Saylor from Pennsylvania and his Berkshire dragged 38 cars up through East Portal on that final steaming day, that last Sunday of September of 1993. This tape has been photographed, produced, and edited by Dan Atkin. This video was taken in November of 1981. This was all taken back in the days prior to automatic color balancing of cameras, and hence the somewhat reddish snow. Reason we went out this day, it happened to be about a 40-degree day, and it had snowed the night before, and both my dad, Don Atkin, and Bob Darr decided that it would be fun to go out and run their locomotives in the snow. Notice the old storage sheds just off the right-hand side. And here comes Bob Darr in his little narrow gauge locomotive. Once again, notice the storage sheds and the 1.5-inch track still on the old wooden bridge. Jim Akins was the photographer of all this footage in the snow. He had bought one of the first video cameras at the time. It was an extremely heavy unit. The camera itself was probably the size of a shoebox, and then you still had to bring along with that the recording portion of the video camera, and that was the size of maybe 2 shoeboxes. Then at home on your television set sat another camera, and this was what they called Reggie Vision. Notice here in this scene all of the daylight or sunshine coming through the trees here. The trees were quite a bit thinner at this point than they are today. And as we approach the tunnel through East Portal here, there's no bridge which at present time crosses the tracks. This scene right here obviously looks quite a bit different than it does today. approach Twin Bridges, you'll obviously be able to see the difference here. This is the spring of 1982. The engineer here is Bob Ahrens. Jim Akins and myself, Dan Akins, took these photos. I did the pushing of the flat car, and we instructed this gentleman not to go too fast because we had to be able to keep up with him. He obviously did not. Just wait till you see the speed here. This is John Schmidt's first engine and train. And here is John Schmidt. In this scene, watch for Joyce Johnson, one of the few times she appears on video. This